This starship is a very unique one in the history of Starfleet's ship design. For a long while, the prototype for the class was the only one in service due to an incident in its development. At its launch, and for several years afterwards, it was unequivocally the fastest Starfleet vessel produced thanks to its experimental warp drive, a form of trans-warp drive known as the Protostar drive. But this ship has more going on than just that. Let's take a look. Beginning with its real-life design history. Of course, the vessel was going to be the poster ship of the Star Trek Prodigy and therefore would have to be pilotable with a small crew. This informed the scale of the vessel, which was designed by several people, with Ben Hibben, Nicky Monteleone, and Nguyen Studios working on designs from John Eaves and concepts by Jia Nguyen. Inspiration was drawn from elements such as sports cars and concept cars to emphasise the Protostar's main goal, speed. 2 years were spent establishing the design of the vessel, and earlier concepts nailed the narrowed and domed profile pretty early on, with additions and tweaks to certain elements until the look was established. The overall chrome look of it, as well as the very visible hull panelling, gave it the appearance of a prototype, almost unfinished with its lack of emblems. This style was reflected internally too, with white, silver, grey and black being the colour palette, lacking the warm or even darker but rich tones of Federation vessels of the era. It looked gleaming, new, advanced, and slightly bare. Again, unfinished even. So, in-universe, the design origins for this vessel are very storied. The Protostar Project was essentially to create a vessel to house a new and untested method of warp travel, termed Proto-Warp. This system was an augmentation to traditional warp drive and considered as an alternative to slipstream drives, but this vessel was developed in tandem with the USS Dauntless, the testbed for that other system. The gravimetric Protostar drive drew its power from a contained protostar, hence the name, which was connected to traditional warp cores, although they were also condensed in scale. Additionally, a third warp nacelle was developed that was designed for exclusive use in the drive. Even without this, however, the Protostar was capable of very high warp factors, rivaling the fastest ships of the prior generation in a much smaller frame. When it reached its maximum speeds, the Protostar drive could be engaged, creating a burst system that could cover up to 4,000 light-years in a single jump that lasted just minutes. Although this was the priority system of the vessel, no expense was spared when it came to cramming in newer technologies. From weapons systems to exploration requirements and smart systems, the Protostar really was a no-holds-barred pinnacle vessel, but on a smaller scale than something like the poster ships Odyssey or Sovereign. However, while it shone on a technological level, it forfeit a lot of comfort, with only the captain's cabin having a sizable quarters and the rest of the crew lumped into communal bunk rooms. However, there was still a holodeck for its utility. Many new prototype tools and even specialised uniforms were assigned to the project too, such as new phasers and tricorders. The vessel's scale led to several other cutbacks too. Internally, the use of turbolifts was reserved, with staircases and ladders being more common in locations where a turbolift was unneeded or too large. Because of the placement of the third nacelle, the shuttle bay and cargo bays were located to the front of the secondary hull, and therefore the deflector shifted to under the saucer section. Because of the limited space, however, auxiliary craft had little room to stay, let alone specialised vessels. To offset this, the latest industrial replicated technology allowed for the creation of needed vehicles from scratch. The Protostar class was small enough for planetary landings too, so lots to mitigate shuttles. The initial prototype was constructed between 2380 and its launch in 2383, simply named after the drive, the USS Protostar NX-76884. The vessel was assigned to Captain Chakotay, under Vice Admiral Janeway, and its first mission was a jaunt back to the Delta Quadrant as a test mission to revisit previously contacted worlds and establish ties. However, the vessel was displaced in time, and an agent of the Va'al-Nakat placed an advanced construct program that was designed to turn Starfleet vessels on one another on the vessel. Chakotay managed to hide the ship back in time around 2363 in the Tars Lamora prison colony. Here it would remain, the fate of its crew and captain unknown, until it was discovered by a group of young prisoners, and eventually came back into contact with the Federation in 2384, where the vessel was destroyed after its construct virus infected the Federation fleet. Despite this ignoble end, the Protostar class was given the green light for production, and a new vessel was under construction at San Francisco Fleet Yards that same year. The Protostar was only 139 metres long, making it smaller than the Defiant class, and it was only 6 decks tall, although Deck 1 was on 2 levels. However, there exists a reference in show at the vessel being at least 200 metres long, and measuring the vessel as it appears has it being even larger, so you can't see me, but I'm shrugging. Either way, it's on the small side for Starfleet ships. As mentioned, and a continual theme of ships in the later 24th century, many elements of the vessel were automated or capable of being run by the installed holographic program, meaning that it could be commanded by one person and the hologram, although with less efficiency than a full complement of 20. Its automation extended into its damage control and repair systems, with repair drones and systems capable of responding to hull damage instantly. So, the propulsion. It zooms. Moving on. No, seriously now. Okay, so it had 2 specially designed warp cores that operated in tandem to produce warp speeds of up to 9.97, which is actually less than the Intrepid class. However, as a reminder, the Protostar class was less than half the size and had very compact cores. Despite this, most of the secondary hull was given over to its propulsion systems. These 2 cores supplied 2 cylindrical warp nacelles, but nestled between them was the gravimetric containment drive that held the carefully suspended and compressed Protostar. This was attached to a 3rd nacelle that was kept sheltered within the secondary hull until needed, when it deployed and accelerated the vessel into high warp 9.99s. Who knows what factor it is in earnest, as this velocity was simply termed Proto-Warp instead. Another weakness of the Protostar drive, however, is that it was not subtle. Using it blazed like a beacon that could be detected many light years away, however, its exact course was not traceable. At impulse speeds, it maintained a high level of manoeuvrability thanks to its tiny scale and powerful cores, and I believe it's one of the few vessels that actually has impulse engines in its nacelles, above and in front of the warp coils. That's not confirmed though, just going by schematics. Its armaments included 3 Type 12 phaser arrays, 2 pulse phaser cannons, and 3 torpedo launchers, although it was not typically loaded with quantum torpedoes. The phaser systems seemed to be set into channels within the hull at points, which gave them an added layer of protection at the cost of a reduced field of fire, it seems. It did, however, also possess a reactive hex grid focusing shield array, which was another prototype shielding system consisting of hexagonally segmented deflector shields instead of a single bubble or layer. This new system was surprisingly durable for its size, and the narrower field of fire was offset by its manoeuvrability. The Protostar class, thanks to its drive, it can follow a similar mission profile to that of the Intrepid class in that it can dart out to the distant reaches and accomplish its goals. However, its small scale means that it was not designed for long-term missions, as it lacked necessary commodities such as advanced medical suites and recreational activities. So essentially, it was not really an exploration vessel, but would be very useful for surveys and as a scout ship, or a diplomatic courier vessel. The Protostar drive alongside the slipstream drive remain the 2 most promising transwarp alternatives and bring the distant reaches of the 4 quadrants that little bit closer. At first I thought this vessel was overpowered by its drive, but on reflection I'm not so sure. Its full limitations have yet to be explored, and its scale limits the sort of things that it can accomplish, but it's a fantastic step to a new era of exploration. Additionally, I just really like the design and would be happy to see more of this little class on specialised missions across the galaxy. So, thanks for watching this breakdown of the Protostar class. It's quite the compact and advanced little vessel, a distilled drop of Starfleet's R&D, with the mandate of creating an incredibly advanced little testbed at the expense of some variability and comfort. It has a couple of tricks that it does very well, and I look forwards to seeing if it changes at all when it goes into commission as a ship of the line. Thanks again. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.